Hello, everyone. I'm Rick Anthony. I'm the general manager of Amazon Inspector. I'm here with Kashish and Crispin, and we're very pleased to talk to you today about Amazon Inspector and how you can assess your Lambda code and generate SBOM with that service. These are two new features that we've launched here at Inforce. So today we're going to tell you a little bit about Inspector. We're going to talk about the problems that it solves and how we think about vulnerability management and the development process we went through. We're going to talk about our new features, the ability to export your software bill of materials and assess your Lambda for code scanning. And finally, we're going to have Crispin talk about Volkswagen's journey with Amazon Inspector. So if you Google Amazon Inspector, you'll actually come up with two results. So there is a Amazon Inspector, which we call Inspector Classic, and that's a service that we launched back in 2015. We're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the new Inspector that we launched at reInvent in 2022. And the big difference between the two is Classic worked more like a traditional scanning tool, where as a customer, it was up to you to decide what to scan, when to scan, and you had to figure out what to do with all the findings. Instead, the new Inspector is an automated vulnerability management service that continually scans your workloads, and we look for software vulnerabilities and unintended network exposures. Today, we support 3 different types of resources through Amazon Inspector. We support workloads on EC2, we support Lambda workloads, and we support workloads running on containers through assessment of images within ECR. So when we went to go and rebuild Inspector, we asked customers, what problems do you have with traditional vulnerability management systems? What should we be thinking about? And customers came back with really 4 core areas that they told us to take a look at. Number 1 was they wanted a solution built for cloud. What does that mean? Well, cloud is really flexible. You can easily spin up resources. You can grow your applications very quickly. You can tear them down very quickly. And traditional vulnerability management systems that ran on periodic schedules would just miss those resources. And customers said, we don't want any holes in our vulnerability management results. We want to see everything. Number 2, customers told us, we want to be in the business of dealing with vulnerabilities and the findings, and we want to do that in relatively real time. We don't want to worry about enabling a system, configuring it, administrating it. We just want to get down to the business of remediating our vulnerabilities. Number 3, customers told us, we want one solution for all of our workloads. We don't want to switch tools just because our application migrated from EC2 to containers, or we refactored our application for Lambda. And number 4, customers told us we want the findings to flow into our other tools naturally so that we can do automated patching or automated ticketing. So having the ability to connect to other systems was really important. So as we took that feedback, we started to develop the new Inspector, and we really focused on a couple of critical pillars to solve those problems. And we decided, number 1, our solution had to have a frictionless activation and management. We didn't want customers to struggle over turning Inspector on or configuring it. Number 2, we wanted a model where we were continually monitoring your environment. And that way, as soon as a new vulnerability was defined or a new resource was launched, we would do an assessment. And as a customer, the results were always there when you wanted them. You didn't have to wait for a Sunday evening to run your scanners and get your results on a Monday morning. They were just there when you needed them. And number 3, we wanted to focus on prioritizing those results based on your environment. So we know that vulnerability management solutions generate a lot of findings, and we wanted to be able to tell you these are the important ones for your environment so that you could focus on things that really mattered versus trying to weed through all the findings that are typically generated. So digging into that first pillar, frictionless activation and management, the way Inspector works is you're able to go into the console and with one click, turn on Inspector. And we'll show you this during the demo later today. And if you're integrated with organizations, you can assign a delegated administrator, and that administrator now can configure all of your accounts, and you have one identity that sets all of your configurations, sees all your data, and you have a single point for taking all your results and sending them anywhere else you want. We also support auto enablement so that as new accounts join your organization, they're all turned on by default. You no longer have to remember to enable something new, and this prevents gaps in your coverage. Second pillar, continual vulnerability monitoring. So once you enable Inspector, Inspector goes through a phase where it will discover all of your resources automatically. So in the case of EC2, we find all your EC2 instances. In the case of Lambda functions, we find your Lambda functions. In the case of container images, we find all your container images. And we do an assessment of all those. And once we get that baseline, we then intelligently track those resources and rescan them automatically for you. So as an example, if you patch your EC2 instance, Amazon Inspector detects that, we find the relevant vulnerabilities that we've created as findings, and we close those for you. So as a operator of Inspector, you don't have to do any administration. Every time you go into Inspector, the vulnerability findings are up to date. As another example, if there are new CVE definitions, when those are defined and they come into our system, we automatically look through all your resources and find out, well, what's impacted? And once we find those, we reassess. As an example, customers using Amazon Inspector when Log4j hit last year, most of our customers learned about the vulnerability, went to work the next morning, they turned on Inspector, and because we had definitions for that vulnerability, the system had already reassessed everything. And now, as an Inspector customer, you're in a position to know exactly how you're impacted and where you're impacted without waiting for someone to go run a scan, collect results, and do some more analysis. So this really is what we call a managed service. Instead of you as a customer having to define when you scan and what you scan, we do that for you. And then the third pillar is the results. We want to provide results that are meaningful to you and your environment. So we provide a risk score that tells you, is this the most important thing in your environment? Is this the thing you should be focused on? And we do that by looking at the configuration of your environment. So we look at your EC2 instances and say, is this instance accessible from the internet? If so, and that vulnerability requires that type of access, that's really important. And if the vulnerability requires network access and you don't have network access, then that's probably less important to you. Same thing with exploitability. If the vulnerability is exploitable, that's super important. If it's not, it's probably less important. And now you're choosing things that are more important to you because we know that there's so many vulnerabilities that you have to pick and choose where to start. And once this information is generated, we allow this data to flow out to other systems. We publish it onto EventBridge, and we also send it to Security Hub so that you can send it into your own tools and deal with it wherever you want. And as you make changes, you remediate, you terminate instances, we track that and those changes flow into those tools as well. So this is just a brief review of Inspector and what it does today. I'm going to turn this over to Kashish, and he's going to tell you what's now new with Amazon Inspector.
Yeah. Thanks, Rick. Before I deep dive into the two main features that we announced yesterday, the SBOM or SBOM generation and Lambda code scanning, I do want to call out some of the features that we launched in the last 3 to 6 months. since reInvent, and I'll briefly go through them, each one of them. And if you have questions, if you want to deep dive into it later on, we'll be available outside after the session. So the first one that we launched about 2 months ago was deep inspection of EC2 instances. So when we launched Inspector at reInvent 2021, so about 15, 16 months ago, we launched with support for EC2 instances and container images. And within EC2 instances, we were primarily looking at operating system packages. We were not looking at programming language packages like Python packages or Java applications like jar files, etc. With this expansion, we also look at those programming languages or packages from those programming languages such as Java, JavaScript, or Node.js, and Python. We will continue to add more support for more languages, but this is pretty critical because vulnerabilities like log4j, which are typically within jar or even within transitive dependencies within jars, you will be able to identify that in EC2 instances. One thing that we do differentiate here is that we not only look at the default paths. So if a package is supposed to be downloaded at, let's say, var opt or xyz, whatever the default path is, we will look at that, but we will also allow the customer, such as yourselves, to configure additional 10 paths. So those 10 paths will be 5 paths for the organization and 5 for individual accounts. So that if you have a specific path for your organization, let's say if your organization X stores all packages in var opt X, and you configure that, we will not only look at default paths, but we will also go look at those specific directories to identify vulnerabilities in, let's say, jar files or others that you might place there. The next feature we launched was access to our vulnerability intelligence database. One of the things that we got a lot of feedback from customers was that if they don't have a CVE that Inspector identified in any of their resources, they did not know if Inspector covers that or not. And the reason is that we can't disclose all our sources, but we consume data from multiple open source feeds like NVD, MITRE, etc., and some of our vendors like Sneak, Recorded Future, etc. So now we expose our database, and later in the demo, I'll show you how it looks like and what all additional context your security analysts and developers can actually get to get started with how to resolve that vulnerability or get some more details. We also included more vulnerability intelligence, so things like EPSS score. EPSS score is exploit prediction scoring system, which was not recently, but it has gained more adoption and traction recently. It's provided by the same organization that provides CVSS score, the first org, and it really helps contextualize and give more kind of details about which CVE can be exploited. And just in isolation with CVSS score, it's not that, I would say, it's not informative enough. But in collaboration between CVSS score and EPSS score, it's more, I would say, correlated, and it helps you prioritize what to fix first. And we also now map to MITRE attack framework. So if there are some techniques or sub-techniques being used to exploit a specific CVE, we also provide those information. Now, these two are the main ones that we announced yesterday: software bill of materials export and a Lambda code scanning general availability. We had been in public preview for the last 3 months. So talking about software bill of materials first. Essentially, software bill of materials is like a nested inventory of all your packages and applications that might be in your EC2 instance, container image, or a Lambda function. Now, Inspector, since we track all your inventory, we are exposing that inventory along with associated CVEs in SPDX and CycloneDX formats. Both of these are widely adopted in industry standard formats for SBOM. And for any resource that Inspector monitors, including EC2 instances, Lambda functions, and container images, as soon as we discover it, you will also be able to export SBOMs for individual resource as well as at the org level. So there is a lot of flexibility how you want to export and what you want to export. You will be able to export for the whole org through the delegated admin account, Or if you want to export only for one resource or one account or one type of resource, you will be able to do that also. And the experience is really easy. It's literally one click. If you have your S3 bucket and KMS key pre-configured, you just have to click on generate or export report, and that's all you need to do. And after it is exported to an S3 bucket, then you can run Athena queries on it to identify things like, which package has been most adopted in your organization. And even if it doesn't have a CV right now, having that whole preview of what your supply chain security looks like, or overall software supply chain looks like, that will give you a lot more visibility into what you have, and if a new CV is published, how it might impact you depending on what resources you have. You can also build quick site dashboards on it if you want to look at trends of, if let's say Log4j was being used in 99% of your resources 5 days ago, and now it's being used only across 73% of the resources, hypothetically. So you will be able to trend those or map those trends also. This capability is free of cost. The only, I would say, condition is that if you have that scanning on and that particular resource is being monitored by Inspector. As long as that is being done, we will allow you to generate as many SBOMs as you want. And during the demo in a bit, I will show you how to do that, and I have certain Athena queries that I can share with you on how and what you can use it for. The other major feature which had been in public preview for about 3 months now was support for or code scanning for Lambda functions. To give you a preview of what it does and how does it differentiate between standard scanning. So we offer two types of scanning within Lambda overall security, I would say, from a vulnerability management perspective. We offer standard scanning and we offer code scanning. Standard scanning was identified or was launched at reInvent 2022, so it's been in the market about 6 months. It is one of our most adopted feature, and we just announced support for code scanning. A customer can enable either standard scanning or both code and standard together, and I'll give you an example of how does it differentiate and how it would work. So let's say if you have an application that you're building, and I use this example a lot. If you are building an application, let's say a calculator application, now, and you're deploying that on Lambda function. Now, if a user using your application has to type 1 + 1, and the Lambda function would spin up, and it should return 2, right? And it would turn down, and that's how Lambda function would work. Now, let's say if you're writing that application in Python. As a part of your business logic, you would have to also include some of the dependencies like math.py or other dependencies. Now, standard scanning helps you with identifying CVEs or vulnerabilities. I don't want to say just CVEs because we do identify software vulnerabilities that never get CVE IDs. And I can give you an example in a bit. But we identify software vulnerabilities in those package dependencies that you include as a part of your zip. And we also cover layers. So if you have functions that are using layers, we will also scan for those layers also, or in those layers also. Now with Lambda code scanning, we are going a step further. We will not only look for vulnerabilities in the dependencies that you're adding as a part of your function. The code that you write, the business logic, we will also scan those for code vulnerabilities. So anything like OWASP top 10. So think about injection flaws or cross-site scripting flaws if you have hard-coded credentials in your code, or if you're using weak cryptographic functions. We will be able to identify that. And not only that, we give you recommendations. We give you code snippets for the most part that you can just copy paste to fix that issue. Similarly, for standard scanning, we give you the fixed-in version also so that you can just go and fix that vulnerability right away. To show you some of the examples, it's really easy to activate or enable this feature. As you can see on the screen on the left, the first screenshot, you can either activate only standard scanning or standard plus code scanning both. The first finding example, and I will show you during the demo also, is from standard scanning. We do give you multiple details, like if a fix is available or not, if it has been exploited. So this exploit information is not specifically for your environment. It doesn't mean it has been exploited in your environment. It means it has been exploited in the wild. We do monitor darknet, and we get a lot of threat intelligence from our internal research teams and external research partners that monitors a lot of the hacker groups continuously. So we do provide that information, and then also things like when it was last exploited at. So a CV that has been last exploited at, let's say, 20 minutes ago versus 3 years ago, obviously has a different attack vector and risk associated with it. And like, as you can see, we also provide you fixed version. If there is no fix available by the vendor or provided by the vendor, we do give you that information also. The third screenshot on the right is essentially for code scanning, where you can see we give you the basic information of what the vulnerability is, but we also give you the exact location. So in the screenshot, you can see line 14 is the one where we found that error, and we also give you how to fix it. So with combination of these, we do give you kind of a lot of the flexibility into how you want to enable it and what you want to see. We also have some cost optimizations built into for Lambda function scanning. For example, if you haven't invoked or updated a Lambda function in the last, let's say, 90 days, we will automatically exclude it from scanning. So we want to be like cost conscious also. So we just consider those functions as stale. So if you don't update it or if you don't invoke a function for 90 days, we will automatically exclude it from our coverage. But let's say on the 92nd day or 95th day, you do invoke it again, we'll again bring it back into our coverage. And if there are certain functions that you don't feel you want to scan at all, we do give you tags that you can assign add to your or on your Lambda functions that we will automatically exclude it from scanning. And then one last thing I wanted to call out is that we do provide a 15-day free trial for all our new features independently for code scanning and standard scanning and EC2 scanning and ECR scanning for each account. So if you want to try it out and play around with it, you can. Next, I'll hand it over to Crispin, who is from the Volkswagen financial team, and he will talk about his journey with Inspector. Sorry. Yeah.
Thanks, Kashish. So I'm Crispin, and I'm leading the entire AWS platform team at Volkswagen Financial Services. So I will quickly start just to give you a quick example who Volkswagen Financial Services is. Then we will talk about our journey and our scale, what we achieved in the last couple of years. And we will talk especially about the server and container security requirements at Volkswagen Financial Services. Then how did we set up Inspector in the last couple of years? How do we use it in real life? And then a recap and lessons learned so that you have a few takeaways for you, which you can then make use of it. So actually, who are we? What is this company? So I assume all of you already have heard of the car manufacturer of Volkswagen. So quickly hand up if you know this. Yeah. Yeah, looks good, perfect. So we are basically handling the financial side of everything. So if you go to a dealership and you buy a new Audi or a new Porsche or new Volkswagen, then it's very likely that behind the scenes we are handling the financing or the leasing for you. And we're currently also building like an overarching mobility platform. So this means we are coordinating the entire financial services activity for the Volkswagen Group globally. And if we're talking about assets, then we have like assets of more than 225 billion euros. We are one of the biggest worldwide automotive banks. We operate globally in all 5 continents across 48 markets, and we have like 1,500 employees. Let's talk a little bit about our journey and what kind of scale we actually reached. So we have a central AWS platform, which we call Managed Platform Services, MPS. So you will hear this term a lot during this presentation. And if you're like a Marvel or Avengers fan, then you maybe realize that there's a Bifrost logo. That's, so to speak, our logo of our team in the end. And we are providing the Rainbow Bridge to be the key to the cloud. We have a centralized custom-built AWS landing zone. We are not using Control Tower to be more flexible in the end. The thing is, we're currently at a scale of more than 1,500 AWS accounts. including almost 400 production workloads. And we are a financial regulated entity, which means we need to adhere to regulations, for example, PCI for credit card storage. NIST, CIS were already mentioned today. And the amazing thing is, those 1,500 AWS accounts are managed by one central team, which only consists of 8 platform engineers. And you see the forks over there. So let's talk a little bit about the footprint of MPS. So as I mentioned, 1,500 AWS accounts. The rainbowish color countries are countries where actually AWS is used locally based on our platform for production workloads. So you can see we already scaled a lot about different countries. And if we're talking about purely AWS resources, we currently have 50,000 AWS Lambda functions, more than 3,500 ECR repositories, and more than 1,200 Amazon EC2 instances. The last one is we actually try to move away from those EC2 instances because we do not want to manage those. Rather, we want AWS to manage them actually. But still, we have certain workloads which require EC2 in the end. So let's talk about the journey. So we started with our AWS journey in 2017. And like most of you started as well, I guess, in a single AWS account. We had like 40 developers or 30 developers developing a couple of products. And I can tell you it was quite a chaos and quite a mess because we had not properly an IAM setup was not existing. We don't had any permissions or boundaries in place. And people got just deleting resources all over the place. So then we started actually setting up a centralized landing zone, a centralized platform team, and then we moved to the right picture there after 5 years. That's how our landing zone currently looks like. We are following a lot of best practices together with AWS. So we have like a specific audit account, we have a logging account, we have a shared services account, we have several delegated master accounts, and obviously a lot of product team accounts, which consists of multiple stages in the end. And we always need to follow the high isolation principle so that we can limit the blast radius as much as possible. So as we are a financial regulated entity, we have a lot of server and container security requirements. And I just brought with me the 5 highest security assessment requirements. And our product teams worldwide are regularly audited from external auditors or even internal auditors. So, and just to walk through them on a high level. So first of all servers must be subject to regular security checks based on automated reports. So this means we need to report on servers, we need to report on what kind of vulnerabilities exist, and we need to ingest them also into our CM. Then we need to comply and also prove that our servers are free of malware, because in the end, that's where our critical banking applications are running on. And if they are affected by malware, it's like a huge risk in the end. Also, we need to prove to internal and external auditors that we install recommended patches. We need to prove which services are reachable via the network, because that increases the risk score if they are reachable. And as I already mentioned, we need to ingest certain security events and the logging events to our security information and incident event management systems so that they are traceable, auditable, and we can query those things. I'm not sure how the event advisory process works for you guys, but that's how it looks like in the past for us. So we have basically a computer emergency response team, the CERT at VW, and then we get regular such emails with security advisory about certain vulnerabilities. And in the past, they were sent through the entire hierarchy levels. So they were sent to us, to our CERT team. They then were forwarded to the local CERT. And at some point, those emails reached us at the centralized managed platform services team for AWS. We then informed our global development teams, and then they went to Inspector, Security Hub, and so on to find out which resources are actually affected and what is the recommended solution to fix those things. As you can imagine, that's a very, very slow process, and it will take some time until finally those information and the emails reach our global development teams. So we talked about internally how can we scale up this process, because in the end security is everybody's job. There shouldn't be a centralized security team the security should rather lay inside of the teams into the cross-functional teams. And we were discussing, on the one hand, the assessment requirements and how can we scale that to a global level. Because in the end, our product teams should focus on what they can do best, and that's developing amazing products for our end customers. And they should not really focusing on implementing vulnerability solutions, because that's something which should be there out of the box, the transparency and also potential solutions. And we, as the central platform team, we wanted to provide a centralized and standardized solution which has all the transparency in place and which also has recommendations in place. So, and then we reached out to the inspector team in the end, and I quickly want to talk about the story. So, we are based on the shared responsibility model with AWS. We as a central platform team do a lot of heavy lifting for our product teams. So we have like 60% of the controls which are in place. It's our responsibility to own them and also to make sure that those controls are our responsibility so that our product teams can focus on their applications and their services in the end. And in 2021, we were looking at the inspector usage because more and more workloads moved to AWS, more and more data moved to AWS. So somehow we wanted to provide a centralized vulnerability solution for our product teams. And we took a look at Amazon Inspector Classic and noticed, oh, that's a bunch of work we would need to invest there because there was no organizational support, no one-click enablement, no event bridge integration. And we reached out to our account team with all the challenges we saw, and they connected us with Kashish and Rick a few years ago. And accidentally, they were running a beta for the new inspector, so which has all of the features we needed. So we joined the beta quickly, and in July 2021, we onboarded first accounts just to get a feeling for it. We onboarded the first instances, we were onboarding the first ECR repositories, and actually it solved almost all the problems which we had at that point. So soon after reInvent, when Inspector was launched and it was GA, then we integrated all of our 1,500 accounts. And you can see like a snapshot here from the EU Central 1 region, where we have like all accounts onboarded. We have like 65 of the instances. Why that is, we talk about that in a second. We have obviously all repositories onboarded and more than 10,000 Lambda functions. So why are not all instances are currently onboarded? So there are two main reasons at the moment. The first one is the SSM agent needs to be installed and best at the latest version available at the instance. Otherwise, Inspector is not able to scan this instance. And the second one is that there are certain marketplace offerings which we use, and they don't have the SSM agent installed, and we also don't have access to the instance and to install anything. The Lambda functions, we come to that. And we also have requirements that we need to scan our code, obviously for internal vulnerabilities. So when we introduce vulnerabilities like adding injection flaws, adding secrets to that. And we actually joined also the beta of the Lambda code scanning in March 2023 to get more visibility into our self-developed solutions. Just quickly, the benefits I already mentioned. The multi-account support is super important for us. As you saw, we have 1,500 accounts, and we do not want to manage all of those onboardings and ensure that everything is available. It's just like it's there. It works out of the box. The integration with Event Bridge is very important for the SIEM integration so that we can inform our product teams about potential security risks and vulnerabilities, and especially the continual vulnerability and network reachability scanning, as vulnerabilities are not static. So you can be compliant today, but if there's like a new Log4j vulnerability, then you are impacted immediately and you need to know about that. So I guess you remember the picture. And with Inspector, we actually turned this thing around. And now the teams get proactive alerts about vulnerabilities. So there's no waiting for any emails and checking mailboxes regularly. Rather, Inspector is alerting the teams directly. How that looks like, we will talk about that in a few seconds. The second thing is introducing Lambda standard in code scanning. So for the identification of self-introduced vulnerabilities. And that's an important thing because a lot of vulnerabilities are introduced by the development teams by accident. So it has a high risk. So in the end, we trust, of course, our developers, but accidents happen because maybe you need to you need to hotfix something, or you're just trying out something, and you're a lazy developer like I was in the past, and you're just putting these secrets directly into the quellcode, and yeah, you will fix it later, but in the end you don't, and you do not put it in secrets manager, for example, and then you have hard-coded credentials by accident in your code, and that's like a huge vulnerability. If we're talking about 50,000 Lambda functions, and I put a picture there how actually our staging works. So we have multiple accounts per application, and each application has then access to 4 dedicated accounts. One for the development, one for the integration, one pre-prod, and one production account. And in the end, it's almost 4 times that you deploy the same Lambda in each account. And 50,000 Lambda function enabling code and standard scanning, it could generate a lot of money, and it would generate a lot of costs. So that's why the support of tech-based exclusion are very, very important for us. And we follow an internal best practice where we use the tech-based exclusion that we only scan Lambdas on the development environment because our developers need early access to vulnerabilities, but also on production stages because that's the most sensitive environment in the end. That's an example how we integrated Inspector into our software development lifecycle. It's just one example, as in vwfs we have multiple SDLCs and each company is a little bit different. So just quickly how we're using it. So it's similar, I guess, to your SDLC. So we are going the full agile way with early feedback iterations. We have a scope definition phase where you refine user stories. We design solutions, we develop it, and so on. And Inspector is deeply integrated into our SDLC because it's very important that we have quality gates. And in this case, Inspector acts as a static gate during tech reviews and the approval phase to actually check that there are no critical findings or no high findings, so that not new vulnerabilities gets introduced with a new production deployment. We also started shifting left, and we're using in the development phase also like things GitHub Dependabot to even catch vulnerabilities before they get deployed. But what I mentioned earlier, vulnerabilities are not static. They can happen and they will happen. So what do we do actually with all of those vulnerabilities? So first of all, a snippet of our CM integration. And that's just like a very scaled down approach because there's way more logs ingested in the end. But I wanted to focus for you to keep the complexity low just for AWS security events in this case. So we integrated Inspector with our CM solution. And every vulnerability, every security event will directly get ingested into our CM. What happened in the beginning, of course, when we enabled Inspector, we had a lot of security events because you get full transparency into your environments, into your resources. So you need to find a way to triage that. For example, with the CVS score to make really decisions which those vulnerabilities you need to focus first. Then we're using the CM to actively alert and notify our product teams. So for example, we're generating Jira tickets to make all of those vulnerabilities traceable and auditable and assign the responsibility to teams so that our security officers are able to track them. We send out also email notifications and we have integration with different chat solutions. We generate daily reports for our management, and we have a management executive dashboard so that they are able to find out what kind of vulnerabilities are there, and we also report them to auditors, obviously. A second integration we're using is the integration into CloudGuard. So Checkpoint CloudGuard is a CNAPP solution, and we have a lot of security officers who need a single pane of glass. And besides Security Hub, a lot of our product teams using CloudGuard to get insights into their real estate in AWS. And with the Event Bridge integration, it's also easy for us to to focus on customers and their tools which they use. And here you see basically a different view of the inspector findings, and it's more about the centralization of the of certain resources and the risk score. So I will quickly talk about how we're using that in the real life. I guess all of you heard about the Log4j 0-day exploit back in December 2021, and we got lucky at this point of time because we just activated Inspector. And I was still in Las Vegas during that time after the reInvent, and I got a call late at night from one of my principal engineers basically saying, hey, the entire internet is on fire, we need to act immediately, we have task force running, we need to be able to report on that. So I jumped on those calls with my principal engineers, and actually we were one of the first ones who were being able to report what instances were affected. Because we had Inspector enabled, we searched for the CVE, we had the full transparency, and we could report on that in a few hours. And that was like a huge relief on our side, especially comparing that to other teams, like on-premise teams or using different tools. They didn't have that kind of vulnerability of that transparency. So that was something where we really could leverage the transparency and the tooling of AWS and the cloud-native world. But I actually like to talk also about a second one, which happened in March 2023, which was the Windows Server 0-day exploit. And there were two vulnerabilities introduced, the ICMP remote code execution, and the second one is the smart screen security feature bypass. So I got a call at 9:46 a.m. in the morning and an email saying, hey, there's a 0-day exploit. Actually, two of those. It's very critical. We need to report on that immediately. There were new task forces set up. We need to find out what's going on AWS. So I called, again, one of my principal engineers and saying, hey, full priority on those things. Please quickly find out what resources are affected and which product teams are affected. So 60 minutes later, our team got to the inspector console, and they analyzed and they searched for the vulnerabilities. A few dozen servers were identified across the entire real estate and our 1,500 accounts. And we analyzed those findings as well, because Inspector is recalculating the CVS score based on certain criteria like network reachability, and we could identify the highest risk servers quite easily. So 76 minutes later, we identified also all affected teams and informed the teams as well. In case sometimes teams do not have the subscription to those events set up already, or maybe because of the time zone differences, they are like in the United States and they're still asleep or so, that we called them as well. And that's just amazing that it took us a little bit more than 90 minutes to identify all the affected instances and also report on those and inform the affected teams. In the pre-inspector phase, that wouldn't have been possible at all. The SBOM feature is the second thing we got access to as an early beta phase. And that will be, from a strategic point of view, a very important feature for us in the future moving forward. And the main reason is we need to report on third-party open source components. So we not only need to have a list of components and dependencies we use, rather we also need to prove that we only use certain licenses of the open source components, for example, like MIT licenses. The thing is, before a go live, there's a gate on whenever we have a custom solution built that we need to prove, and the product teams need to prove that they do not use any of those not allowed OSS licenses or third-party components. So and we have this gate built on a custom solution, a script which runs in the pipeline, which is kind of fine, but it's not really scaling to the approach we need. So we're really looking forward with the Inspector team, Kashish and Rick, to continue improving this feature and integrating SBOM further into our SDLC, especially that we can have a more efficient process and reduce the manual effort to a minimum. So short recap. You remember the slide with the security assessment requirements? So with the help of SIEM, we actually are able to tick all the boxes we need. And the cool thing is, if we're talking about installing recommended patches and fixing certain security incidents and vulnerabilities, we're using also AWS Systems Manager, Patch Manager, that we automatically can fix vulnerabilities on the fly without somebody actually going into the instance and clicking the update button or running a shell command. We also improved our event response process. And now we have the centralized dashboard in the delegated admin, and we gave everybody access to it, read access, so that everybody can have a look and can find out what critical vulnerabilities are there. They're able to search through the database. They're able to look at events, and that changed the entire way how our security officers and how our teams collaborate with security teams. And everybody is now aware about those things. And quickly, the lessons learned. So definitely vulnerabilities are not static. They will happen. They happen mostly at a very bad time where you actually focus on different things. And you definitely will be affected. There's just no way around. You need to accept that, and you need to have a setup, vulnerability management, which includes notifications so that you can easily notify your teams. You need to set up a sustainable process, but it should be also a pragmatic process, which actually lives in the real world, so which is actually executable by everybody. And it's important to trust the process, because in the case of an all hands on deck situation, like with those Windows Server vulnerabilities or Log4j, you need to have a process where you can rely on. And you don't want to find out, oh, there's a step in the process which didn't work, because those situations are very critical, and you should focus actually on the vulnerabilities and not thinking about the process itself. From a general point of view, as we're working with 1,500 AWS accounts and we reached a certain scale, we really need to focus on AWS services which are highly scalable. Such a big organization is only able to function, and we're only able to support 1,500 accounts with just 8 engineers if everything is fully automatable, and we can easily roll out new features, new services. And the support of AWS organizations and the integration of AWS organizations is a key argument and key factor for us to continue scaling at this point. And I can say the inspector definitely ticks all the boxes, and it's just another big leap for us in our AWS journey. And we're looking forward to introduce certain new features. And now I hand it over back to Kashish for a live demo. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Crispin. So I'm going to talk about or show a few things that we talked about during the whole session. This is what the new inspector looks like. We give you whole coverage details into how many. So this is my delegated admin account. So this is the central security account that typically teams set up to get a full view. For example, here you can see overall, you can see this is the administrator account and what all is activated or deactivated. With one click, potentially you can activate all accounts if you want. But if you want specific type of scanning, you can get that too. So you can get only EC2, ECR, Lambda standard, or Lambda standard plus code, or all scanning one altogether. One of the features that we provide here is that if you turn this on, any new member account that is added to your AWS organization, you don't have to come back and reactivate. Whatever configuration you set here, for example, this, and you save, any new account that is added to your org will automatically get activated for those specific scanning types. So we have tried to make it really easy for configuration and very low manual overhead. Another thing that we provide here, which Rick covered initially, is that we give you real-time coverage details. This was one of the major issues if you think about like 10 years ago with IT in general, about shadow IT. If you don't know about something, you can't scan it, or forget about security. So here what we try to do is we tell you what we are covering at real time. Like in near real time, I would say there could be a delay of 30 to 45 minutes, but in real time, we give you coverage details. And we give you actionable guidance. So you can see this instance is being monitored and this instance is unmanaged. So we do require systems manager agent for now for EC2 scanning. We don't need any agents for container image scanning or Lambda scanning. But for EC2, if there is no agent installed or activated or configured, we will tell you it's an unmanaged instance. So that at any given time, you know what is not being scanned, and we give you actionable guidance so that you can avoid any security coverage gap. Similarly, we give you similar details for container images and Lambda functions. For Lambda functions, we give you for both standard and code separately. What is being scanned by, or what is being monitored for standard versus code, we give you those details also. So this is kind of our main dashboard. Now, talking about the SBOM feature that we launched recently, all you have to do is go to this SBOM, and by default, if you add no filter for DA account, which is the delegated admin account, SBOM for all resources will be exported to S3 bucket. But if you want to add a filter for, let's say, specific tag or specific account or a specific instance or any resource, you can do that also. But if you don't want to do it, you can select which format do you want it in. Is it Cyclone DX or SPDX? And let's say if you want SPDX, and you can browse your S3. In S3, something like this will come up. And if I open any So this is what it will come up like. So for this instance, for example, for this account, you can see for different things which EC2 instance, which ECR, and if you open it, you will be able to see, which you will be able to see the JSON of the overall SBOM. I know this is not pretty at all, but the benefit here is that you can run Athena queries on it. With Athena queries, for example, this Athena query that I have here, I'm just trying to see what all packages I have which is being used across the organization the most, regardless of CVEs. So here you can see that this add user or Python JWT, this version is being used across 6 resources. And the idea is you get visibility into supply chain all over, and then you can add more information if you want. Like if you want to see just top 10 vulnerabilities that is being used in your environment, you can do that also, and things like that. So basically, you get a lot of information from any of those things. Then we talked about let me open one of the findings which was recently launched. And you can sort based on age, because findings can come in real time, and even without us doing anything, there could be findings coming in. So here is something we talked about before. Along with inspector score, we do give you EPSS score. EPSS score is generally, you can think of it as a percentage. So this is like 0.042%, which is extremely low, even if the CVSS score was 5.5, which is medium. Now, if I give you an example here of log4j, so this is another feature I talked about briefly, our access to our vulnerability intelligence database. This is where we give you the whole details or basic investigation that your security analysts can do. This was for log4j. EPSS score here is about like 97.5%, which is extremely high. So this is where you can see the difference. The CVSS score, I mean, it was 9.3 here, but CVSS score 5.5 and 9.3 are not that different. But if you add exploitability on top of it, or EPSS score on top of it, it's drastically different. We give you other informations also, like, and if you click on it, it'll just take you to MITRE website, which MITRE attack or technique or which sub-technique is being used to exploit the CVE, what all industries have been impacted primarily. Since this was log4j, pretty much all industries are being impacted, but for other vulnerabilities, obviously there won't be. And also things like last exploited at date, which we also provided in our findings. The deep inspection feature that I talked about before, this is where you can add your custom paths. So you can go and add up to 5 custom paths for your organization. This is only available to the DA, but each account gets their own additional 5 accounts, and that way we will be able to scan all the directory paths that you give us. Then there are a lot of other, slicing and dicing you can do. The exporting feature is available in CSV and JSON also. If you want to export findings, we also send findings to Security Hub and also on EventBridge. Since everything is event-driven in Inspector, you can easily, we have a lot of customers that integrate with ticketing systems like Jira or ServiceNow. So anytime a new finding is created, automatically it goes and creates a ticket. Since we monitor the state, so if you patch an instance or you update a Lambda function with an updated vulnerability, we would go and automatically close it. So in the findings, you can see findings getting closed. Also, if I terminate an instance or delete an instance, that would go and automatically close the finding in Jira. So that is how we are trying to kind of close the whole loop with minimal to no manual intervention. There's obviously a lot. This is a big product now. We have launched like in 15 months. There is a lot to go. But if you have any questions, we will be happy to take questions outside. And we do come with a 15-day free trial. So if you want to try it out for one or more accounts, feel free to do it. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us on our on LinkedIn. Also, this is our LinkedIn information for all of us. These decks, I think, will be made available. So you will have access to these slides also later on.